Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zatlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, it is currently 9:45 where I am 8:45 because you just had to put down the kids to get on the podcast because you're a good guy. I said, hey, I'm not going to be available on Sunday, and the reason why is because I went to the Steelers-Eagles game, and we're just like outside of the game itself, it was a blast. It was actually my birthday, so I took off. I didn't do anything. I didn't post anything, and it was great. It was a lot of fun until the end result, but otherwise, I appreciate you giving me a little bit of flexibility there because outside of the result, it was fun. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Glad that you're able to do that. Happy late birthday to you. And yeah, I had to wear the Eagles hat because it was the Blue Oval Podcast
I noticed that.
game of the year. And yeah, was happy. I was a little happier probably with the result than you were at the end of the day.
Yeah, but that's you know what, and like I just kind of knew that this conversation was going to happen, so I've been mentally preparing myself. So yeah, otherwise it was a good day though. Like you can't complain. Got to go to hang out in Philly. So one thing I was not thankful for is we actually lost. I think a rating. Did you see
Yeah,
that?
wasn't sure if that was real. I have seen that happen before, and then it like usually pops back up later. So
Okay.
I was basically gonna treat it as if we didn't get any. It was just a down week.
All right. Well, we'll pretend like it was just a glitch in the matrix, and we'll move forward. I know everyone is wondering, for those who submitted questions, when we're going to do the mailbag question. It's either going to be next episode or the episode after that. Still unsure yet. Still want to put out like a few more feelers. So if you have any questions for the mailbag that we're going to answer on a podcast, go send that our way. Contact at thestrideport.com. You can go DM us on Instagram, on Twitter. You can comment on YouTube, whatever it may be. So go check that out. But today, we're going to be talking about a handful of different things, a little bit of a fun podcast. We got some pro news, and then we got some international signings and transfers. And where do you want to start, Ben?
Let's start with the pro news, and that, of course, is Graham Blanks deciding to turn pro and sign a sponsorship deal with New Balance. He had previously signed an NIL deal with them, so it comes as no surprise that they are the company that lands him. And after winning his second NCAA cross country title, he makes the move to the professional side of things. It doesn't come as a shock,
No.
but it wasn't a sure thing. I thought there was there was at least some hope in my mind that we would see him for the remainder of this academic year maybe win and or at least compete for some track titles. But he's striking when the iron's hot. It's hard to say that his stock is ever going to be higher than this. I mean, he was an Olympian this past summer, wins an NCAA cross country title, and then runs 12:59. That's a streak that's pretty hard to beat in terms of raising your stock type of performances. So ultimately, happy for him, but it is sad to see him leave the NCAA ranks.
Yeah, there was a part of me that I agree. I thought, okay, well, he'll probably stay through the spring. Because my thought process is if you don't go pro after winning your first NCAA cross country title, running 13:03, coming back from injury, and then still making the Olympics and making it to the finals,
Yeah.
if you're still not going pro then something a lot would have to change after that for him to now go pro. Now, of course, him winning the extra title helps. Running 12:59, I don't think running 12:59 was probably a big like major factor in the grand scheme of things. It
Sure.
sounded like he had already had the deal locked down. He's like, I'm going to do one more race with Harvard and call it. Maybe he was trying to go after that collegiate record. So I don't know. I did think it was a possibility. Am I surprised? No. The question is, who is the 5K national title favorite and why is it Parker Wolf?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be Parker Wolf, right?
Yeah.
There's certainly other talented guys out there. I mean, Brian Masau, and Haptem Samuel, but like, I think based off of Wolf's 3K and his past 5K performances at NCAA's this past spring, I think he comes in as I hesitate to say overwhelming favorite, but I
A
think the
clear favorite.
consensus, yeah, clear favorite in my mind.
Yeah, I don't disagree. When you run 7:30, I mean, and you're historically known as a 5K guy. Yeah,
I was just waiting for you to say 7:30 something, and then I was like, wait, no, it is just
it's just
7:30.
7:30. Just 7:30. And the fun part is that he's not the fastest guy in that event. Like, that's the best part. um, well, if there is a guy who could potentially come out of nowhere and maybe
Yeah,
challenge Wolf for the 5K national title, it's a new international signing that just took place on Friday. First to report was Josh Grenade on Instagram. Shout out to him. And we were also able to independently confirm on our own. And it is Ishmael Kipkurui. Am I getting that correct? Ishmael Kipkurui to New Mexico. This guy has a PR of 7:38 for 3,000 meters, 13:05 for 5,000 meters, 8:09 for 2 miles, all of which was run on the outdoor oval. He is the 2023 U20 World Cross Country Champion. He was, I believe, 6th at the
yeah.
Kenyan Senior Cross Country Trials, qualified for the World XC Championships, where he recorded a DNF, and he was 10th at the Outdoor Championships in Budapest over the 5,000 meters. Oh my gosh! First thoughts and reactions.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen obviously signings with like an eye-popping PR, right? Where it's like, I'm trying to think, like I have Tim Samuel or
Hmm.
Lemon Goal or like someone where it's like, oh wow, like they ran like 14:40 on a road 5K, and you're like, man, that's really exciting. But like, how do we actually like interpret that into like an NCAA cross country or track performance or whatever? This, I mean, not only has he run these times, but he's consistently run them. And then he's also been just one of the best competitors in every single competition he runs in, including the Kenyan cross country championships, which are one of the most like talented and loaded cross country races you could be a part of. And he just seems like a gamer, a guy that can run and compete in any conditions and still run these incredibly fast times. And so he comes in my mind, as one of the best prepared, like, foreign athletes into the NCAA system that we've seen for a while. He's raced against the best of the world multiple times. He's run these times consistently. He's not a flash in the pan. This wasn't a just a outlier performance day that are giving him these great PRs. I mean, he's going to be a beast, and I think he's someone that is going to be competitive right away. And I don't think there's really going to be much of a learning curve for him, because it's going to be just as competitive or less competitive than a lot of the meets that he's been running in previously.
Yeah, I love what you just said there about the consistency. Like, he has run 7:38 and 7:39. He has run 13:05 on two separate occasions. And if you really don't, if you're really not sure about that 3K time yet, 8:09 for 2 miles, which is insanely fast. So
I think that's better, right? That is objectively
it
better.
would yes. Yes, I think so. I think so. I
Yeah.
don't know. I would think so. Um, but regardless, I do think there's going to be an assimilation period. There always is, with international guys who are so elite that all they ever know is just going out there and dominating,
Mhm.
especially guys their own age. In the NCAA, yeah, maybe some guys are, your age, but, and by the way, he's 19 years old.
Mhm.
It's not like he's like 25 coming into the NCAA brand new. He's 19. That's what blows my mind. And so I do think there's going to be an acclimation period. He's just generally young. I don't think he knows any better. International guys usually have to have an acclimation period of learning. And I don't see any evidence of indoor track performances. So whether or not he races, I don't know. The other key part of this, however, is, of course, New Mexico's cross country team.
Yeah.
They bring back, I think, a heavy portion of that squad. I think Rikus Van Niekerk may not be coming back. I'm not entirely sure on that. Um, but like, he was a fourth scorer, fifth scorer kind of guy, maybe third on a great day. You add in another guy who could potentially win the cross country individual
Yes.
national title. And all of a sudden, New Mexico, which was a team we already thought could get on the podium, now you have to wonder, okay, they're probably podium favorites. And just how deep into the podium now can they get?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a little improvement from some of their back end guys, but we have seen flashes of strong performances from some of them. At their best, they can win a national title, and they don't have a whole lot of margin of error with the way things are set up right now. But again, we're talking about this in December. Like
Yep.
they just have to get ready for next NCAA championships in November. They got 11 months to put together the rest of this lineup and get it all together. I think we're going to be looking at them in that top tier of teams, because when you have two guys that, like you said, realistically could win the NCAA championship, and it could basically come down to him and Haptim Samuel, depending
Yep.
on like if Wolf comes back, and it's going
Solomon
to,
Kipchoge and Brian
yeah,
Masao. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's going to, it very well could come down to the two of them for the NCAA title. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't have high expectations for him indoor, but I think outdoor and then in cross country, I think we're going to see some pretty incredible performances.
And the biggest caveat is I can tell you they're not done yet.
Yeah,
Now I don't know. I don't know if they'll bring in a 1305 guy again, at least not for this year. But I imagine they're going to bring in someone, at least one more. You know, I'm sure that the way that they've been recruiting Darren Gosson and Brian Mady there, the recruiting has been overwhelmingly aggressive. That they have to be. I don't know how they're able to. New Mexico, which is, don't get me wrong, they have resources now. The men's program now has more resources after they got brought back a little bit a few years ago. But like Oregon and, Texas and Texas Tech and Florida's of the world. I'm just surprised that it's New Mexico of them all that is able to bring in these distance guys that I know for a fact those other schools, despite being sprint schools, they would still bring in those guys if they could. So
yeah, that was going to be my question to you. Is we thought that with the, obviously the NILs, capabilities and all of that, and then obviously the settlement that's on the horizon, these kind of lower tier, smaller conference schools would kind of get left in the dust. And New Mexico just seems to be like tossing around these big powerhouse schools when it comes to competing for the best of the best talents. Like I think we're going to struggle to see someone of his caliber at his age, particularly, come on the market like anytime over the next year or two. And for it to be New Mexico on the heels of getting Haptim Samuel, like it's just pretty surprising to me, and it gives me a little hope that the programs like this, if they say like, hey, we're going to kind of go all in and maybe track or across country and spend some resources there, if we're not going to be dumping it like all of our athletic department's money into like normal major sports, that we could see a little bit more parity across these smaller schools in the NCAA system for cross country and track.
yeah, I mean, it just depends on how aggressive the athletic department wants to be.
Right.
Like I imagine New Mexico is also in like a fine line of like the conference realignment era.
Yeah.
They want to certainly be a power or have more of a demanding presence. I'm sure athletically, and I know that they probably have been more aggressive, especially now that they've been great improving greater funding back to the track program after really reducing it 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So. Um, Interesting to see what happens with New
Yep.
Mexico. That was really fascinating. Um, Moving on. Speaking of big names from Kenya, Juliet Cherubet had entered the transfer portal. TSR was the first to report that on December 6th, I believe. And one of the schools, I recommended a few, Oklahoma State being one of them, and my other school that I recommended was Florida. Well, on Monday, December 16th, Juliet, of course, signed and she went to Florida. Florida announced. She has a 409 1500 meter PR, 857 3K PR, 1525 5K PR. She's a two-time top 20 All American on the grass, and she was a 5K All American in the spring. All of that off the top of my head. First thoughts on Cherubet too. Oh, and she's currently has sophomore eligibility or in track right now. So, first thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a home run for both sides. I think it made a lot of sense for both parties. Florida gets someone who can score points for them across 3 different seasons, is someone that can keep them relevant in cross country as well, really round out that lineup this coming year and give them a presence for years to come. And then help them in their goals and ambitions of winning national titles on the track. And I think she certainly can score in multiple different events. I mean, obviously, qualifying for the 15 and the 5K last outdoor season is certainly evidence of that. And yeah, I think she was one of the bigger fish on the transfer portal, and for Florida to for the Gators to land her, I think is huge. And for her, I think she has to feel like she's in good hands with Coach Will Palmer. He's obviously done very well with bringing in transfer athletes and keeping them at their level and improving. And she's going to be training with a lot of other great women. So I think it just made a lot of sense of the world for both parties.
Yeah, I mean, even the coaching aspect. You think about Coach Will Palmer, someone who has proven to be very aggressive in the transfer portal, at
Hmm.
least as of maybe not this past year, but the year before. And even then, he
Yeah.
was still pretty active international recruiting. He is someone who has worked very closely and been highly successful with elite level Kenyan talents, such as Cherubet herself. The skill set of Cherubet reminds you a lot of Flomena Asicol.
Yes.
It reminds you very similar to Amaris Tenissima as well. Um, it's a perfect fit. And not only that, it's a perfect fit in the sense of like Hilda Olamamwe could theoretically come back to the NCAA in the fall of 2025. But if she doesn't, there's like, let's say she went pro this summer. Would we be totally shocked if she went pro? I don't think we would. And as you look for, who is going to be that next star, the next focal face. First, it was Parker Volby. Now it's Hilda. Like, who is going to be that next face? Cherubet seems like she could be primed to be that next face. And I think it's the perfect time. Get her antiquated with the program while Hilda finishes up eligibility. And if Hilda does come back next fall, great. Then you have a team that can contend for the podium at this point,
Yep.
especially with so many women returning. And so now they have a multi-year answer, 3-season threat, very like a proven and established. It's such a massive win for Florida, and I can't say I'm surprised, but it is a huge win.
Yeah, I felt like she was always destined for an SEC school
Yep.
because she just checks all the boxes. They want someone who can score for them on the track while also providing like a good presence in cross country, and that's exactly what she does. She's that the versatility there. I think was always going to be highly desirable, and for Florida to get her, I think is like I said a massive win. Let's move on to Phoebe Anderson, who is
Hmm.
now on the transfer portal. Again, someone who could absolutely help in a lot of different ways, but especially on the grass. What are some good landing spots for her in your mind?
I'm convinced Providence. I'm
Yeah,
convinced
that would be
Providence.
interesting.
I don't see how she couldn't go to Providence. It's now, I will say this, she has no cross country eligibility left.
Okay.
So
Well,
that's the
that
key part. Yeah.
okay.
But
Yeah.
she's a grad transfer. She's she's from England, right? And who do you know is from England on Providence's team?
Everyone.
Yes, correct. Everyone. Actually, Kimberly May's not, but that's not the point. Um, it's a very heavy international presence from overseas in the UK area with Ray Tracy's background. It just it's they're already in the Northeast. They're both already in the North. Like it makes so much sense. They already have a slew of elite milers. You round out your longer distance portion with a true 5K, 10K talent. I think she's running the 15:29 for 5K. She's
Yep.
multi-time cross country talent. 32:54 I think for the 10K. She's exactly what Providence should need, could need, would use, especially for the upcoming, you know, uh, winter and spring seasons. But I don't know also if she's going to go now, or she's going to go next year. But we'll see what happens. Where else could you see her going?
Yeah, I'm curious if Providence goes for someone that doesn't give them that cross country optionality. So yeah, I think for me, I honestly wouldn't be stunned to see her if she wants to go south. I mean, again, she's someone that I think can score on the track. I mean, she wasn't. I mean, she was 19th in the 5K this past spring. She was 10th though in the 5K during the indoor season. Like she's knocking on the door of
Hmm.
scoring points at the national meet, and obviously is someone that can also score you some valuable conference meet
Hmm.
points. And I again kind of come back to some SEC schools where it's like they can kind of take on those rentals of, hey, we're just gonna you're gonna help us score some points, win a conference championship, win a national championship. And one school that again loves to do this kind of thing is Arkansas. And I think
Mm.
for a program that is kind of in flux, and we'll talk about one of their possible departures in a little bit. But I think she's someone that can come in, give them some scoring capabilities in the longer distances that they don't have a lot of options for. And I don't think they're going to be quite as bothered with the lack of cross country eligibility because like their team just isn't ready to compete at the moment. And I think they're going to be looking to rebuild more towards 2026 rather than 2025.
I don't see her going to the SEC. I just
I mean,
don't.
I hear you from a yeah. I mean, based off of everything we know, and more of the Ivy League to SEC track is not as established as like a Ivy League to UNC or Duke or Virginia.
You're right in the sense that like she would be a great like, hey, this girl can score for us. We are worried about national meet team scoring.
Yes.
Like, who cares if she's a sprinter or not, or a hurdle or a field thrower?
Yeah.
You know, go bring her in. I get from that perspective, but when I think of someone like her, she's already on the East Coast. I could see her going ACC. That's where I see if you go ACC, who are already heavily recruiting, the academic programs in the ACC are some of the best in the country.
Yeah.
You know, you think about Notre Dame, right? You think about Duke. You know, Boston College is right there. That's already in the northeast portion of the country. Um, you think about like those kind of programs. Would NC State take a flyer on her? You know, it's maybe they wouldn't. I don't know, but all I'm getting at is that you think about the current Jeremy Kane. Who's the current coach at Duke? Am I getting this right?
Oh, from Elon, right?
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name. But he has many ties in terms of recruiting from overseas, specifically from the UK, right? You could say the same thing with Pete Watson at Boston College.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a few other areas, a few other teams in the ACC that I'm forgetting about. So yeah, I think it could be Providence or the ACC.
Yeah, Virginia was the other one that kind of came to mind. It's Kevin German. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
So for the Duke cross country coach. So yeah, I hear you. And that's generally what we've seen, right? Is the Ivy League to ACC track is usually what happens. But
Yep,
yeah,
it's true.
I think that's likely what we see. I'm not as sold on Providence as you are.
Hmm.
I think it's ACC, or again, it could be more of a outlier option in something like Arkansas. But let's
If
move
I
on.
could just
Go ahead.
interject real quick, do you want to make a bet? How about this? Are you so convinced on your Arkansas pick that you'd
Oh
put it
no,
up against, and you wouldn't put it up against my Providence pick?
no.
Okay,
I think the most likely is like one of those four ACC
yeah,
schools. And then I think Providence is probably a little bit likelier than Arkansas, but I am not. I don't think it's like overwhelmingly more likely.
I wanted to be like, I'll wear like you wear a Virginia Tech something, I'll
Yeah.
wear a Belmont something, whatever it may be. All right, we can move on.
All right. Speaking of Arkansas, though, let's talk about Mia Cochran, who is now on the transfer portal. After a fantastic fall season that saw her finish 41st in cross country, she is now going to be on the move and has, let's see, how much eligibility does she have remaining? Why am I missing this?
I think she had it's like a weird variety. It's like a one season of cross or two seasons of a cross, one of outdoor, two of I don't even know. It's a wide variety. Let me
Yeah,
try to find
it's
it.
2 seasons of indoor and possibly up to 3 seasons of outdoor, but only 1 year of cross
Yeah,
country.
that's what it was. Okay.
So yeah, and on the track, I mean, she's been highly productive. 4:15 in the 1500, 9:07 3K, 15:57 in the 5K. Again, a lot of versatility up and down up and down all of these different events. But I think the cross country value is so much higher than it was at the beginning of the year, and
Yep.
I think is going to be a big selling point for her as she looks to select her next school.
Um, where do you have her going?
So I liked a lot of the options laid out in the article, but like I thought Oregon and Washington, I think on paper again makes sense. I think again, I don't know if Arkansas will let this or if this would go over well, but I thought Alabama makes a lot of sense
Hmm.
in a lot of different ways. I think that they would be thrilled to have someone like her just across the board. I think she would be super helpful as someone that can help out in the middle distances, but also can be a contributor on the grass. And I think they could really use someone to kind of be right behind Doris Lemon-Gold, right behind a couple of their other top women in cross country, and really make this into a firmer podium contender type of team.
Yeah, I struggle to see her not in an Oregon singlet. It just she's just like if she didn't have the cross country resume that she did after this fall, then I'd say okay, yeah, let's maybe
Yeah.
look elsewhere. But she is a mile-centric runner who was one spot off from being an All-American. She was 41st at the cross-country national meet. I think she was top 20 at pre-nationals this year. Like she was a
Hmm.
borderline top 50 runner just across the season. In fact, she was a top 50 runner
Yeah.
across the season. So when you think about women who can contribute on the grass and be like top tier milers, I don't know if she's a top tier miler, but she could certainly get to that point. I just struggle to see how it's not Oregon. I just I struggle
Why are you more convinced on Oregon rather than Washington? Because
because
basically everything you
Washington.
said is the same for Washington.
Yes, but Washington is not afraid to go after grad transfers. They're more international based.
Yeah.
Neither of which Cochran is. Um, I could she end up in Washington? Yes. I just think there are subtle differences in the way that certain recruiting goes for Washington um, that could allow Cochran to end up at Oregon.
I just think they kind of need her more, honestly.
Who?
Washington, in terms of just someone else that like Oregon just has an embarrassment of riches with their milers. I don't know. Again, she would be helpful and she would be very very helpful in cross country, but I don't know if they're necessarily looking for like it becomes duplicative after like when you have
Oh,
five
I
or
love
six of
that
those same
word.
kind of women.
That was
What?
great. Duplicative.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that's a great. Is that a real word? I love that
yeah.
word.
That's real word.
I love that. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah, I agree. I think Oregon makes sense. I just think at some point they're going to have to recruit or bring in someone with a little bit of a different variety.
And
And she
that's
provides a little bit of a more flexibility there too. So
yeah. And again, I still think she's a great fit. She
yeah,
would be a great fit. But you look at Oregon's current roster; they're losing a Tifers on the grass. They lose O'Sullivan. They lose Matug. And they lose, I think, India Weir, I want to
yeah,
say.
Washington loses a lot.
So they lose three of their top six, and then shortly after, they're going to lose Maeve Styles, right? And they're going
Yep.
to, Chloe Forrester has one more season on the grass left. I think the idea of like trying to go build from the ground up again before the rest of the women leave would make a better use of scholarship allocation money,
Yeah.
given that Cochran only has one season of cross country eligibility remaining per Tifers. So maybe that's kind of the only reason I see that. That and again, in just those subtle ways that Washington does recruit, but Yes, I see Oregon, but I variety of schools could help.
I'm curious if that paradigm of which we see things of like, hey, you got to start kind of rebuilding, right? Where it's like going after the younger athletes, if that's just going to be like done away with by some programs where it's just like, no, we're just gonna get like a ready to go product that has 2 years of eligibility, and we're just gonna cycle through that. Like,
Yeah,
I mean that's certainly going to be at least one program strategy at some point with the way the NCAA system is going, where you don't have to worry about developing an 18, 19-year old. You can bring some in, but you're not going to spend money on, and if they hit, that's awesome. But otherwise, you're just going to be cycling through these top athletes that are already at their prime and running well, and you just see if you can make them a little bit better, and hopefully everything hits, and all of a sudden you got a smash success, and then you just try to recreate that year after year.
yeah. I mean, you look at New Mexico. New Mexico has
Right.
just
Exactly.
made the wildest rise in the last 2 years, and we're like, wait, New Mexico of all the teams, New Mexico, and
Yeah.
so yeah, they've kind of done it overnight, more on the international route rather than transfer portal.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you can fill gaps. Sometimes it's a little bit tougher though to like adequately fill gaps over the long run with just transfers
Yeah.
because they're expensive. And they're extremely hard to land because everyone wants them. They're all in the same
Mm.
transfer portal that every other coach sees. Um, so yeah, I'll keep that there. In terms of next names we have here, which ones did you want to go after next year?
Let's just quickly touch on this Oklahoma trio:
Yeah,
Ronald Nagedich, Shadrack Kiptu, and Evans Biwat, all headed from Kenya to Oklahoma. All hold very strong times, all sub 14 5K runners. And I mean, we're again talking about a program that can instantly make themselves relevant. I think that's what Oklahoma's trying to do here. And I mean, again, these guys aren't going to come in and necessarily be like all American contenders. Like, I mean, maybe some of them could. Um, but I think they're going to give Oklahoma a baseline of consistency, make them competitive in a loaded well, not loaded, a very good SEC cross country scene. And I think at least make them more attractive for runners to come in the future, which honestly I think is the goal of all of this, is to bring the program's prestige up a little bit so that they can hopefully attract more bigger, better runners in the future.
maybe that's the case. Maybe that's possible. And I bet you said loaded because you thought they were still in the Big 12.
Yeah,
Because
I was, and then I was
yeah,
like, nope, they're not in the Big 12.
not the Big 12. Um, maybe that's true, but I also just think it's because the SEC is about to get way more competitive. Like they're
Yeah.
not the only SEC school that's about to do this. There's going to be like one or two more that are about to make heavy investments, and you're going to be like, who's competitive? What? Yeah, it's watch out for that. That'll be in the next year or two. Um, I don't. I think these guys could eventually develop into All Americans. In fact, I'd be
Yeah,
surprised
I
if two
meant
of these
more
three
like
don't.
immediately.
Right,
Yeah.
immediately, I would be a little surprised. Again, the learning curve people seem to overlook just because of how talented some international names are. But one guy holds a 1348 PR. One guy holds a 846 and 1351 PR. Another guy holds a 1341 PR. So yeah, I mean, like, and they're all freshmen, right? So they can
Yeah.
develop, and not only that, but they already have, Tobias Chariot, who was 104th at the NCAA championships, was 18th at Joe Piani, 6th at Arturo Barrios, 10th at SECs. He placed, he was in the top 50 portion of our rankings at one point briefly this season. Knowing what they have right now, and I should note that I think they lose their second, third, and fourth scorers from this past year, and admittedly, it wasn't a great team. But knowing what they have now, are they a top 25 team?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know. Yeah, I have to I had to go back and comb through like who's returning. I don't think so either, just because of the massive uncertainty and the very limited depth that they have. That combination usually does not yield a top 25 team kind of productivity, as we saw with Texas Tech. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of
I would
wondering.
be stunned if they made it to nationals. Like it's a hard road for them out of the Midwest, and they would have to run very
True.
well in the regular season to pick up
That's
enough
a good
points.
point.
So
That's a
they're
really good point. I
tough
didn't even
spot.
think about that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be fun to watch
Yeah.
because,
Mhm.
and they're going to be a team that's on our radar in a way that they have not been in the past. So certainly want to keep an eye out. Next up, we have Linus Chepkochei,
Sure. Koki? Yeah.
also of Kenya, headed to Virginia Tech, has run a altitude converted time of 13:33 over the 5K. A nice pickup for Ben Thomas and Virginia Tech to continue the momentum that they've picked up at the end of the last fall season.
They now have George Cootie. They now have
Mhm.
Nicholas Kipchirchir. They now have Linus. And I can't help but wonder. I'm like, this is not it. They're
No,
going to get at least one more. And yeah, buckle up. And it's surprising because when Thomas was at VT as the distance coach, he really didn't go too heavy international. I
yeah,
mean, he did get Neil Gorley, right? He got like, maybe a couple UK guys that I'm not familiar with, but it is a little surprising to see him being so aggressive. Now, that said, I think they did bring on Coach Ryan Sykes from Akron, right? And you can see now where I'm going with this. Sykes was pretty strong in terms of his recruitment from overseas, mainly the African countries, specifically Kenya. That makes a little bit more sense in that aspect. Um, Virginia Tech qualified for the national meet this past fall. I think they were 26th at the national meet. I want to say, do we know?
sounds about right.
Yeah, it's close enough. 26. I'm awesome. With this pickup, where are they in the national conversation? I believe Kipchirchir and Cootie both return, as will a lot of the support scorers. Actually,
Um,
be nice.
at yeah, without any new additions, I think they're like 26th. Like I honestly, I think that they're,
How
I
does
think,
how does adding a 1333 converted guy
yeah.
not make you any better?
Well, I think that they were at like the highest end of there, and I think you would agree with me, right? Like this,
Uh,
like the way they finished the season. I mean, compared to
yeah, yeah.
like
If
the
the
way
way
they
that
started the season.
I thought 26 was not an unrealistic reflection of how where they were at by peak's end.
Yeah, I guess if I would have told you that Virginia Tech finishes 26th of the national meet in October, like,
Yeah, I said no shot.
yeah, you would have been thrilled with that. And so
Just like when
I
we're at the
think,
national meet. Oh
yeah.
yeah, okay.
So I that's more of where I'm coming from. Of like,
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
think it keeps them at this level and prevents any regression to maybe the possible mean that they could have been at.
What I'll probably have to do in the summer is, let's just say they had no one else, right? In the summer, I'm gonna have to put it on you and the rest of the writers here, and I'll be like, I can't. There's no way I'm allowed to rank this
Yeah,
team. I will write about them, but if they are ranked, I'm gonna have to put it in your guys' hands,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that'll be curious. I'm not sure. I think you're gonna get over. You're gonna outvote it on that one. I think they get 24th or 25th in the rankings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying 26 kind of facetiously because that's exactly what they finished last year. But I think 20, like I around that 25 range, I think is a
Yeah.
very realistic expectation. So, all right, let's move on to two other names that are on the transfer portal: Edwin Kiprono and Gideon Kiplimo, both hit in the transfer portal after a stint at Texas Tech. They should hold a full slate of eligibility for full seasons in indoor and outdoor, 3 seasons for cross country. They did not light the grass on fire
I'm
this
just going
past.
to clarify. I think Kiplimo has 2 seasons
Okay.
of cross country, and 3 seasons of indoor
Okay.
track and outdoor track.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate it. They did not light the world on fire this past fall, but both hold 148 PRs in the 800. So would be a big pickup for some of the middle distance schools out there. I had one program in mind who I think there's a pretty obvious uh, team in Ames, Iowa. But outside of them, I thought Texas A&M made a lot of sense. You stick within the state. Again, they've had a great success with talented African runners in the 800, and I think they could do a lot with both of these guys, and I think it would be a good fit for both parties.
I should also note that Kiplimo has during the fall of 2023 was eighth at Ontario Barrios. He was 12th at Big 12s, and he
Yeah,
was
much
11th at
better.
the Mountain Regional meet. So he does hold value on the grass. Like he is a good. I wouldn't say he's like a spectacular three season threat, but he can be a high level scorer at a handful of decent meets. And now granted, again, the Big 12 was before all this mass
Yeah,
wave of talent came in, but still, like he's pretty solid on the grass when he's at his best. Iowa State is like the very clear and obvious. Like I would be shocked if they don't go there. The 800 hybrid, yet still being able to contribute at some level if you're Kiplimo from a depth perspective in cross country when he's at his best. Texas A&M, I don't really see it. I think at this point, if you're not running 147, they're probably not looking at you on the transfer portal. I just don't think that makes sense for them, especially if they're really not trying to get any more like long distance value. I don't think they really care. So I think in terms of like schools, like I could see honestly Virginia Tech. They've been a little bit more active with the international side. They recruit, Ben Thomas is great with middle distance runners. Makes sense on that end. Oklahoma State, I could kind of maybe sort of see maybe a Texas. The Texas Ole Miss, the problem with those schools is that they don't really recruit
yeah,
like international names, and it's not too often that you see them get like a ton of stars out of the trip. Well, it's not. You don't really see them get guys like this out of the transfer portal. Is what I'm trying to
yeah.
say. So
Yeah. Ole Miss from yeah, like running purely like fit running perspective makes sense. But yeah, I would agree. I'd be a little surprised. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think obviously both of these guys have potential of being game changers in the middle distances, and if they can kind of put it together and get into the right program that fits, I think we could hear a lot more from them in the future. Oh, one name who will be taking some of their scholarship money is Adam Burlison, headed from Texas to Texas Tech. He is comes in with a lot of accolades from high school. Ran 4:03 in the mile, 8:54 in the 3200, 14:28 on the 5K on the track. And an interesting move for Texas Tech. Obviously, Texas Tech has picked up a lot of international runners, kind of trying to hit that quick start to their program with Ernest Chariot, Solomon Kipchoge. Interesting that they're able to sign Burleson, who I think gives them hopefully some developmental possibilities. Someone who could round out their lineup this year and then be a big part of it in years to come. Um, so an interesting fit for both sides. If it works out well, then it could be perfect because it could give Texas Tech someone who has plenty of eligibility and is someone who can solidify a lot of different spots for them. Um, but if it doesn't go great, I could see Burleson on the move fairly quickly.
yeah, I mean, so it's so interesting because he was a graduate of the class of 2024.
Hmm.
He originally signed and committed to Oregon, like announced, like I'm with Oregon, like ta-da, and then he switched. He flipped to Texas. Now, after one season in the NCAA, he's out and he stays in state and goes to Texas Tech. I love the move from what Texas Tech's roster needs.
Yeah,
They just had two guys leave. It kind of makes sense though, just because it opens up a scholarship spot for him. Kipchoge, Solomon Kipchoge and Ernest Cheria are going to dominate the 5K, 10K distances and on the grass, but they very clearly just needed some kind of depth. And Burleson wasn't great on the grass this past fall, and he's not been great at NXN in his last two appearances during his high school days. But he has shown more than enough as a prep that he can be a top cross country talent. He has proven that. Whether or not we see it, I don't know. But not only could he provide depth on the grass, but he will attack that mile 3K distance in a way that Solomon Kipchoge and Ernest Chariot are just not dropping down to. Maybe they
yeah,
go down to the 3K to get speed work, but they're not going to go down to like the mile, which is an area that, you know, Texas Tech doesn't really have a home run hitter in that Burlison could be. So I like Burlison. I think it was a good fit. It was a good pickup. It kind of made sense from like a logistics standpoint. I thought he was going to go run to Oregon because it made sense considering where he originally committed. But I thought this was a sneaky good pickup.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think this has a lot of potential to work out really well. But again, based off of what we've seen from Burleson already, it's certainly this could not be the last transfer we see from
Possible.
him.
Yep.
Let's move back to Blacksburg, Virginia, and talk about two sisters from Germany who are headed to Virginia Tech. Jewel Lindner and Emma Lindner are headed to the Hokie program. Jewel has run 424 in the 1500, 952 in the 3K, 1009 in the 3K steeple, whereas Emma has run 209 in the 8 and 423 in the 1500. I mean, I we did this a little bit at Belmont where you just recruit siblings, and it's always super nice if you can get one because you feel good about getting the other.
Yeah, you
And
guys got the Micklio brothers, right?
yeah, we had McLeod, we had
McLeod, yeah.
we had the Vroons, we had the Cheesemans ended up.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We had I'm missing some. We had Grzymkowskis. Yeah, we had a lot of different siblings across the board, and it works out well, especially when they're both talented. And it looks like the Lindner sisters certainly fit that bill. And especially with freshman eligibility coming in, that they're going to be able to be there hopefully for a while. And again, for Coach Thomas, help rebuild this Virginia Tech middle distance group.
Yeah, I think they're good from like a just a developmental standpoint.
Yeah,
Like these are nice names: 209 800, 1002. I think steeple. Like if everything goes perfectly, I think who's the steeple? Which one's the steeplechaser?
Jewel. Yeah,
Jewel. If everything goes perfectly, then it's 1009 steeple. Excuse
yeah,
me. If everything goes perfectly, then yeah, maybe she can get to the national meet. The steeplechase has not been like from a depth perspective, like the back end of it has not been like amazing as of late.
yeah,
Um, so like sure, it could happen. I just think it's a long-term developmental thing. I think they bring range and value and three season threats
yeah.
and they hit every portion of the lineup and roster. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say there.
Yep. All right. Let's move on and talk about a couple names that are on the transfer portal, and that is Lucas Earl, Luca Pup, and Will Aitken. All are currently running for Wingate. Aitken is a grad transfer, while the other two are going to be.
I think
Uh,
Poppy is a grad transfer.
okay. Oh,
I'm not
sorry.
sure. Yeah, he wasn't. I don't think he was listed in there, but I
No.
yeah.
Okay. Um, for Earl, he has 3 seasons of eligibility across indoor, outdoor, and cross country, whereas the other two have significantly less. Um, and Early, I think, obviously has some very strong times: 808 in the 3K, 1401 in the 5K, 2909 in the 10K, with a lot of eligibility. Um, Plus the 15th place finish at D2 Nationals this past cross country season. I think he's certainly the most valuable out of these names.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys bring different skill sets. I mean, Earl, again, at being the 15th at NCAA D2 XC championships, Poppy, 344, 1500, 403 mile, 355, 5K. And then Aiken, I think it was the 33rd at D2 Nationals XC.
Yep.
So for me, the way I look at this is all three of these guys are either going to go to Tulsa, Butler, or ACC. Like, I'm not saying they'll all go to the same school, but if they go anywhere other than those three categories slash schools, I'll be surprised.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Earl, Wake Forest.
I like that. They could use them. That'd be
Yeah.
great. Because
He
I
fits
think
it.
he raced at Panorama Farms against Wingate. So I'm sure John Hayes probably knows who he is.
Yeah. I mean, he fits their timeline, and I mean, he's gonna have a great group of guys to run and develop in, and he's clear. I mean, as talent, in cross country. I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
I may have lied about him running at uh, Panorama Farms, so I may have lied on that, but whatever. Okay.
All right, let's move on to Bennett Booth Genthe
Genthe, sure.
Genthe of Villanova transferring to UCLA. He has run 148 in the 800 and 4 flat in the mile. Won a D3 national title a couple years ago, or what, last year?
2020 indoor
in-
mile. Yep, in
Indoor
2024.
mile 2024. Thoughts here? I'm this one kind of confuses
A
me.
little. So like he's a mainline guy. Like he's a Philly guy. He's like he's from the PA. I actually don't know if he's a Philly guy. I take that back. But he's from Pennsylvania. I don't think of, I just sometimes I just say Philly and I just assume it covers Pennsylvania. Yeah,
That reminds
they're
me. Have you seen the Always Sunny clip?
no.
Where Charlie's like, "Wait, there. Did you guys know Pittsburgh's in Pennsylvania?" Like, he just could not understand that there's multiple cities in one state.
Yeah, you could tell me someone's from Erie and I'd just be like Philly, that's close enough. I just um but spends a semester there doing cross country, which is clearly not his strong suit, and now heads back out to the West Coast after coming from Pomona Pitzer,
Yeah.
where he was a top D3 talent, joins UCLA. He's kind of just a 1-year rental, which is like fine for whatever you might need. So
Yeah.
I think they have Michael Morales, who was great on the grass and will probably be great in the 5K, 10K. They got a 147 guy, Angus Harrington. He rounds out the distance roster. He's tactically really savvy. And maybe he runs like 339. I could see him running, but I think it's more of just a round out the roster, bring some, speeds, miles, strength to a roster that needs it, and kind of a transition year to hold over as UCLA recruits more.
Yeah. From one end of the eligibility matrix to the other, also headed to UCLA is Marie Celie Warneke.
Sure.
We'll go with that. From Germany, a excellent middle distance runner who will have full 4 seasons of eligibility, or 4 years of eligibility coming to the NCAA. Has run 55.5 in the 400 and 202 in the 800. She finished 4th overall in the 800 meter finals at the U20 World Championships. An absolute stud. And I think this is probably one of the more under the radar announcements that we've seen. But UCLA got someone now that can absolutely compete in the Big Ten for titles almost right away, I think, in the 800, and is going to be a fixture for this team. I think over the next couple of years. Maybe she doesn't compete at the national level in her first year, but I would be stunned if she does not compete at a very high level at the national meet over the years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I think long-term eligibility, what she's already done, has the experience on big stages. Like, it kind of makes sense. It's a great fit, and I'm really excited because like Andrew Ferris did a really nice job with Kate Jendrasic, who has run 201. She qualified for the indoor and outdoor national meets. Rose Pittman's run 203. She was the first woman out of the West Regional meet in that event at this past spring. I think it's a really sneaky good fit. And I just was really liked the pairing there. So nice pickup. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that rounds
That's
out
it.
our long list of transfer and international recruits. I'm sure we'll have even more to talk about in a couple weeks' time.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident that we will. I will say, I was texting a few coaches and I was like, has it been a little quiet? And they're like, yeah, it kind of has been. And so,
That's not good.
yeah,
That means a lot's about to happen.
And that's exactly what one of them said. They're just like, buckle up. Everyone's preparing for what the summer could hold. So, yeah. So thank you to everyone who has been listening. Deeply appreciate it. I don't know about next week's podcast. Like, we're definitely going to do one. I just don't know when it's going to be released because Christmas falls on a Wednesday, which is when we usually have this ready to be released. So watch out for that. YouTube, go subscribe on YouTube. We have all those Boston U interviews there as well. We have, what else do we have coming up? Preseason indoor track rankings. We have those coming up. Freshman class rankings will be later. Uh, Despite the first half of December still having a lot going on, it's about to get even busier on the second half. So buckle up.
Yep, absolutely. Leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. Get yourself a Boost subscription. And we will talk to you next time. Garrett, until next week, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.